All right, first of all, I want to know what kinds of things influence your sound. It could be musical or non-musical. I know it's a really broad question.
In my regard, that is a very, very broad question, because I listen to a huge amount of music dating back like hundreds of years. I would say I like everything from classical up to kind of experimental noise to God knows what, and then like the pantheon of electronic music going back like decades. So I've been listening to it since I was a kid and really avidly listening to music. So everything seems to play a part somewhere. Every song seems to take a reference. I don't necessarily notice myself, and I guess I'm not aware of it until I hear it afterwards and think, oh, all right, yeah, those kind of things remind me of a song. Or sometimes I throw a reference in, like if I'm writing a song, I'll throw like a tip of the hat to a track that I particularly like or something. But the list of influences is so broad. It's just the sum of music. It's really hard to describe. I can tell you I've taken influences from everything from hardcore metal to opera or a specific piece of opera to the weirdest noise to the most insipid pop. Everything's just like everything but the kitchen sink.
Okay.
I'm a multifaceted person in that I'm easily bored, in that if I was just to stick to VNV, I'd find it very dull. I love the DJing thing because it's a whole other aspect of entertaining people. I play a very different selection of music, say much more sort of, it's a proper DJ set. I'm a big fan of dance music, so I'm a big fan of dance DJs, and I kind of construct my set in that way. And I've been doing so for, I guess, about 12 years, I guess, since I started. I had the first opportunity to actually DJ. So I tried to construct it more like the way a proper DJ does their set, and try to bring in a kind of lot of grey area music that fits with an industrial club or people who have a broad taste in electronic music, and make them sweat. Main thing. That's job number one.
Right. Okay. So do you have any future projects outside?
Oh, I got loads. I've got a side project called Modcom, which is me playing with a lot of weird technology, a lot of sort of 70s style modular synthesizers, where you see a synthesizer today, it's got a bunch of knobs on it. All the individual circuits that do the different things are all connected up together already for you, whereas in the past you would have a wall of all the different modules that go together to make a synthesizer sound, or a construction of a synthesizer would be, and we should have put a sign on the door that said, we're doing interviews because we're doing a video interview. All right, thank you. It was our stage off, literally. So what was I going to say? So I patched these things together. It looks very scientific, and that was kind of really attracted me to electronics, I guess, in the 70s when I was like really young. I saw people on TV with this thing. It looked like a science laboratory, and I thought, yep, that's what I want to do. So I also do graphics as a side project under another name. I do production for other bands under another name because I don't want it tied to VNV. I've released a number of albums under other names, again because I don't want it to be somehow relevant to VNV. This should be music in its own right. I've written probably about 5 albums of different material that has never been released. That's just, I guess, songs that don't fit with VNV, and they get categorized, and I say, right, okay, well, that'll go in my acoustic ambient projects, like lots of sort of strings and piano and stuff like that, and this one will be in the kind of the chill out after club album, and this will be in the noisy kind of album and stuff like that. So I've got a lot of stuff still to release, but I've always found myself so busy with VNV or busy with other projects that go on, whether they be personal projects or musical projects, that I've never had time.
Right.
Which is kind of unfortunate, but hopefully that will change. Okay, you know the way you hear a song on the radio and gets stuck in your head?
Yes.
The Germans call that an earworm, which is a kind of a nice title because we don't actually have a word for it in English. I tend to get songs literally just playing in my head when I'm not thinking about music. And they can be full melodies, full songs, full production, everything. And I have a shorthand form which I write down what I'm imagining, or what something starts playing over my head, and I start writing the songs literally in my head. And sometimes the melodies get stuck so deep that they play over and over and over, like Illusion would be an example, or Solitary, or Resolution off the new album, Streamline off the new album. With say a song like Space and Time off the new album, I started out just I kind of have a vibe for how, I don't know, it's like a knack, I guess, for writing a song in a certain song structure, and sort of saying, right, okay, this works great as a piece of instrumental music, and now what I'm doing is, and this is, I seriously should have put a sign on the door saying I'm doing a video interview. Give me about 10 minutes. Take 4. So I tend to write those out, and I get down to the studio and I start to flesh out ideas. So I've got like hundreds of these little files with bass lines and melodies and all kinds of stuff. If it's a song like Space and Time, it was the actual initial melody that wrote the song, and then I fit a vocal to that, and I kind of have a knack of, I could write a single note piece of music that doesn't even change chord and still write a vocal track for it that's all melodic, that is the song itself. I hear other people's music, when someone asks me like to write a vocal line for them or write lyrics for them, like in certain other styles of music like electro kind of underground dance stuff, I've written vocal tracks for it because I just imagine a melody that goes with it. It's going to give it a little bit of a hook or whatever, and it seems to work out. So for me, that's the demo process, the actual fleshing it all together. That's me sitting at the computer for a fixed set of time. Everything should have this kind of cohesive kind of sound to it. So you pick a sort of a philosophy of your sound for the album, and I locked myself in a studio for about 3 months, literally, in some cases. Like literally bolting the door so nobody bothers me, because people have a habit of just like walking into your room because they just think you're available at all times, and putting up signs, abandon all hope ye who enter here, and that kind of thing. And I just,
you need one for the door.
Yeah, see, I kind of attract people just walking in. It's like wherever I sit, it'll be like a motorway, because I can be in a club and people will honestly think I've got a sign on my back that says, this way to the bar or something like that, or go through this guy. So I kind of get lost in it. I just enjoy making music because it's purely for myself. If I didn't make music, I think I would explode. These songs that, as I said, that play over my head, I can't stop writing. I was even having eye operations about a year before I started working on the album, and I was at home and I couldn't really focus on anything. I was told, you have to rest your eyes. So I had a keyboard and some sounds and whatever else. I could at least do that. And I was told, you get half-hour computer time and then rest for a couple of hours and half-hour computer time and whatever. And I was writing, like I wrote Photon, which is the second last track on the album. I wrote that at home, and just sort of sitting there staring out the window looking like, I don't know, not doing a Ray Charles impression, but not looking at anything. I'm not focusing, don't worry, looking into the distance and writing this melody. And that's how things seem to work. It seems to be soothing to me. It sort of bathes my soul and makes me less of a bored lad.
Okay, that's a really good answer. So I read that Automatic is your favorite album so far?
I would say, yeah, because like as far as the final result, I had a very pleasant experience, beyond pleasant experience making. I had the most this is the feeling of victory making it. It was just phenomenal. Kind of appropriate, no pun intended, but there have been other albums which were written under very, in a very grueling time for me, where I was going through a huge amount of life changes and other situations which were very emotionally draining, and the music was my way of my catharsis, or my way of at least expressing that and putting it into some sort of form that I could deal with. In some cases it was like creating that, me writing out what would be the advice I would hope to hear from other people, which I never would hear. It was my guiding light. It was the thing that kept me on track and kept me focused, whereas making this comes from a much happier place. And I find that the album title was ironically appropriate, because it was literally like I didn't have to bother. I just did. There were tons of disasters making the album, tons of weird catastrophes, like computers blowing up. I mean, when was the last time you saw a computer blow up?
Literally blew up?
Literally, like smoke come out of it, like fried. This happened twice within 2 weeks. We don't have a power issue in the studio. Like, it's all kind of neutralized power, like clean power. And the guys at the Mac store were like, that's pretty kind of the cue Twilight Zone music. So we had that, and microphones dying and all kinds of weird stuff, and songs getting corrupted and having to reconstruct them. And what it seemed to happen was that every time an accident happened, I'd have to go off and, let's say, re-record a vocal. I'll give you a silly example, right? Imagine you've got a high-pitched signal in the background. Like, let's say we're sitting here, you've got an air conditioning system, right? And you've got a high-frequency signal in the background, and it's kind of oscillating up and down. It's kind of, you have that in the background while you're recording vocals. What you do is you record your song 4 or 5 times, whatever, and you'll cut the best bits out. You know, the bits where you're not going, whatever, you know, saying a word wrong or whatever. But the problem is that each one of those bits is at a different point in that frequency, so you're like going, that kind of thing. We couldn't get rid of it. We didn't know what the hell it was. So we had to go back and re-record Control, and I sang it completely differently, and it turned into a phenomenal song. Like, we were all sitting back going, yeah. So the guy who does the kind of mix engineering for me, who sits in the next studio, he's kind of like a studio engineer, and he does all the tweaking and twiddling and details and stuff. He's a very kind of two-dimensional reality kind of guy, like doesn't believe in anything, and very much the realist and the sort of the very worldly. And even he was thinking that there's something weird happening here. And I'm a bit of a spiritual person, and I have no problem saying that or how far that goes, but we really got the feeling that something was happening, like in the process, that every time a disaster happened, it brought us to a better place. It made me have to try harder, it made me have to rush in some places, but it was almost like somebody wanted a better album written, like as though the universe wanted it to happen. So we'll just leave it at that. It was but other than that, the process, I knew exactly how I wanted things to sound. Knew exactly how I wanted them to feel, and it was a really cozy vibe making the album. Like, whether it made me dance or whether it made me kind of sit there and think about things and think about my life and loved ones or whatever, it just felt like the most natural process. I mean, I actually felt like, you know, when you jump into a car and put your foot on the gas and put it in automatic and roll. It was like that. It really was. There are a lot of themes based on and inspired by 30s America. It's an era that fascinates me phenomenally. I've always been fascinated with the look of it, the styling for whether it be graphic arts or architecture or clothing or whatever else. There's something about that era that just attracts me, and historically as well, the issues and the social conditions that were going on within the country are a little bit like a mimic of our own. There are a lot of parallels to the period we're in at the moment, with the exception that in that 10 years the world leaped forward massively, absolutely phenomenally. Plus, I'm a lover of science fiction, so it was also an era where everybody was being deadly futurist and imagining the world as it should be for people, and imagining a better world, and being very benevolent and naive and optimistic, and in the face of like massive economic turmoil. So I find it to be a very influential period on 20th century thinking, but it's an era that just absolutely fascinates me. So the look and styling of the album was obviously a big tip of the hat to that. A lot of concepts from the time ended up heavily influencing the songs. I think the most obvious one is Streamline, which is and it's really based on the concepts of streamlining and the philosophies that were written by a lot of people talking about building a better world that was not less decorated, that had a function of beauty and function. That there was a grand aesthetic to everything, and it wasn't necessarily about cost, it was about the betterment of humankind. So I wanted to tip the hat to the sort of the naivety of the time, and in so doing did it in a kind of style of 70s kind of, what was at the time 70s futurist electronic music, which was all kind of groovy and sexy and disco. So we're playing it tonight for the first time actually ever.
Oh, so, really?
Yeah.
Alright.
Just decided last show of part one of the tour, we're in Atlanta. It's kind of like having a portable living room. Everyone's sitting there watching TV, watching stupid movies and laughing about them, parodying the movie, you know, whatever. I think the best one was on the previous tour. The Happening was on. Mark Wahlberg, and I was just like, you just stood there and
that
listened.
That one just does the work for you, though.
Right, but you stood there and you just listened to like all the guys just like ripping this movie apart. So that gets you through a tour, but then there's a point like after 4 weeks and people just start thinking, I'd really like a break, or I want to go home. Either it goes constant, in which case everything blurs, all the days blur into each other, or you have this feeling, oh God, there's another 5 weeks to go. Oh God, there's still another 4 weeks to go. And it seems to, even when you get to the last week, the last week seems to stretch out. So I like breaking it up. Obviously people have their loved ones at home and they want to get back to them, and they don't want to be out of, away for 2 months, they don't have a chance to see them. So it's a good way to kind of keep your relationships so they don't, end and dissolve on you, and still be able to tour. And it allows you to regenerate your energy for the next tour. So we've got part 2 will be February, March, starting in Nashville, ending up in Phoenix. So we're going to do this weird kind of tour around the country, and we had to reschedule a couple of shows off this leg like LA and Phoenix, thanks to immigration who managed to delay our visas for whatever reason. Best known to them, however. Thanks for that. And yeah, so like we were talking actually about we definitely want to do a third leg. We just want to see if it's economically viable, because it would obviously be covering places that are left, right and centre that are all over, but we wouldn't even be able to cover on the second leg. So second leg's already a month again, so it's another 20 shows, and your arms must be getting tired holding them. So we're just going to do this for another hour. Just going to draw this out, just see the camera shaking.
She works out, she's got it.
Yeah, well, that's stamina nobody has. I don't care what you say. So anyway.
Okay, well then, last question.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Yeah, for you. Are there any updates on the Crossing the Divide EP?
Yeah, I meant to actually upload it while I was on tour. Guess what? I left the hard drive at home. So it's back in Hamburg, and I really want to get this thing just financed. So it's almost like a cursed thing. I just want it released. I'm just going to put it on SoundCloud and say, here, download it. Here's the artwork somewhere else. Thank you. All the best. Bye. Or put it on RapidShare or something like that. Not that I want to endorse the downloading of data or the downloading of music. Obviously, as an artist, that's something near and dear to everybody. Everyone has their own philosophy about it, but just try really hard to entertain people and engage them and kind of make them feel that they're part of the show too. That they're not just standing there, that they're watching a piece of theatre or something, that they actually get involved, and that's very, very important for us. It should be like an evening of music with friends, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. I love that.
Your arms will get some rest in a minute.
Okay, yeah, we're done. We're good.
That was it?
That was it.